Alright, so this is the JAMMA NES, part 1. Alright, so what you're looking at is the bottom of the NES main PCB. I'm already mid-modification, so you have to excuse me there. An unmodified one would look something like this. Although this one has 2 PPUs in it. Don't ask me why. So what I've done so far is I've socketed the CPU and I've also socketed the PPU. And if we take a closer look here, you can see that I'm actually pulling the red, green, and blue right off the PPU. See that little piece of electrical tape there? Those pins don't even terminate through the main board there. They're not even soldered in at all. Because if you look on the NES, grab a pointing device here, they all connect right there, which is one big fat ground trace. So basically you'd be hooking red, green, and blue all to ground, which obviously won't work. So what we do is we lift them from the PCB and run them off elsewhere. That's the red, green, and blue wires seen here. No specific reason for socketing the CPU, just because I could, I guess, is a good reason, and it was fun to do. So over here we've got the original stock CPU out of the NES, and here we actually have a PPU, or picture processing unit, out of a Nintendo Play Choice. Now the reason we can't use the stock PPU is that it doesn't output RGB, which is what we need to hook it up to an arcade cabinet. So we need to use a PPU that has RGB capabilities. Notice the gold pins, very nice, very nice. So we'll go ahead and just socket this in place. Trying to do 2 things at once, man, the camera and the PPU. Oh, like a glove. These precision sockets are so nice. Okay, and pop the CPU back into place. I just wanted them out so you can kind of get a visual. Normally these are both direct soldered to the NES. So for the JAMMA NES project, you only need to socket the PPU. The CPU you can do at your own risk. Well, PPU I guess as well. There it goes. Cool. Okay. So you want to hook your NES up to your arcade cabinet. Step 1, desolder the old PPU, and there it is, and chuck that. Don't need it anymore. Junk. Find yourself an old Play Choice board, or there are some Nintendo Versus games that use that PPU. It's the RP2C03B. There's also one that has, I believe, one letter different. I believe it's a 2 and then not a C, it's a different letter. Escapes me at the moment. But you're going to need to find yourself a PPU to replace the stock one. So remove the PPU, install your socket, and when you install the socket, you want to lift those pins. You don't want to have them terminate through the board. I don't know if you can see that or not, but these 3 pins here, this one, and this one, are open. There's no solder in them. The pins are lifted. They're not even. They don't go through the board. You can see here, there's a little piece of electrical tape. That's what that little black square is right there. So those pins don't go through the the main board. I have another socket here, and if you look, you can see those 3 are cut down, so that way they don't go through, and then you just solder wires to them and you're good to go. That was for a different project. So now you have your PPU installed and you're pulling RGB right off of it. You can't just go hook that right up to your arcade monitor though. It needs to be amplified. What you're seeing here is actually made by Ultimark. It's their, I believe they make it to amplify the video out of like computer VGA video cards. We're using it in this application, just feeding it RGB. I lifted off the VGA connector that was right here, and I'm only soldering red, green, and blue to it, and then you just pull red, green, and blue right off of here. It does, I guess, have something for the synchronization signal, although I noticed when I ran the NES sync signal through it, it totally screwed the picture up. So I guess that's one of the next things we'll move on to. Is if you hook it up to an arcade monitor, you need red, green, blue, and sync. We've got red, green, and blue taken care of, so they're unamplified here, go through the amp, come out amplified. The original forum post I read was on, I believe, the Game SX forums, and there's a color booster that you can build, and I built this one in the past and I really liked it, but I heard good things about the Ultimark, so I wanted to kind of compare the two. So far the Ultimark doesn't quite have as good a red, but it's still early in the building phase. As you can see, this would be my JAMMA NES number 2. I have a previous one that I built and no longer have that one. Okay, so let's move on. So we pull the sync right off the point of picture here. That's this orange wire, which just goes to the yellow. So just pull it right off the middle there, and then all these wires, in case I haven't shown it, terminate just to a pretty beat up JAMMA edge connector. I'll be buying a new one when I'm actually done in testing phase and actually ready to put this thing together in something nice. So we've got red, green, blue, and sync. Now that would be enough to get video on an arcade monitor, but it'd be nice to power this beast off the arcade as well. These things ran off 9-volt AC out of the gate. Plugs in right back there. I'm hooking up 12-volt DC to it, which does work. I think it was a RalphNet article I read that said you could get away doing that. And really all that you have as a result of that is that chip right in there gets a bit hotter. What that guy does there is he takes the 9-volt, or 12-volt in this case, and kicks it down to 5 volts. Arcades already put out 12 and 5 volt, so what I'll be doing is tapping 5 volt, removing that, and soldering my wire onto one of those three. Can't remember at this point. I think it's the end one here, but the multimeter will lead the way. But again, I did that on my first JAMMA NES. Worked really well because this guy does get pretty hot. That's why there's a huge heatsink on it. Okay, so red, green, blue, and sync are terminated to my JAMMA edge connector. Power, just 12-volt and ground running to the 2 points where that connector would terminate, I guess. You know, pretty straightforward. Like I said, I will be removing this guy here. He's going to get, it still works, but he does get warmer, and just feeding the 5-volt right in there, which works really well. Okay, so that's kind of the overview so far. See if I can get another action video here, and I'll have a couple more coming. This will be the first of many.